The old leather Bible was heavy in Tun's hands. The cover was cracked from years of use, its edges browned by age. It had belonged to his late father, Pastor Adebayo, a man respected across the land for his wisdom and kindness. Tund had avoided opening it since the burial, afraid of the memories it would bring. But now, sitting alone in the small candlelit hut, his hands trembled as he lifted the cover. The pages groaned like an old door being opened for the first time in years. Then something soft and cold tumbled out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 human fingers landed on the open Bible and rolled against his skin. They were pale, dried, and bent like claws, yet their nails were neatly trimmed, as if they once belonged to someone who cared for them. Tund's breath caught in his throat. His mind screamed to throw the Bible away, but his hands would not move. His heart pounded as he stared at the shriveled pieces of flesh, wondering who they had belonged to, and why his father had hidden them in the holy book. Then, as he looked closer, he saw that the fingers were arranged in a strange circle on the page, and on the page beneath them, words were underlined in red ink. "The truth shall set you free." Before Tund could understand, a shadow passed quickly outside his window. Someone was watching him. Tund's village, Iagbami, was a place that prided itself on peace. The houses were made of red mud walls, with thatched roofs that rustled in the wind. The air was always scented with palm oil stew or fresh roasted maize. Children played barefoot in the dusty roads, chasing goats, while the elders gathered under the great iroko tree in the center of the village to share stories of the past. His father, Pastor Adebayo, had been more than just a preacher. He was the village's guiding light. Whenever disputes arose, over farmland, over debts, over marriage promises, people went to him. His deep voice and calm manner could turn anger into laughter. For as long as Tund could remember, the old Bible had never left his father's side. He carried it to church, to village meetings, even to the stream when he went to pray alone. People often said, if Pastor Adebayo's Bible could talk, it would tell the secrets of Iagbami. Tund had grown up in the shadow of this man, quiet and reserved, more comfortable with fishing than public speaking. When his father died 3 moons ago, it felt as if a wall had been pulled down, leaving the whole village exposed to the wind. The burial had been grand. The elders wore white, the women sang hymns, and everyone spoke of how the pastor had served the people faithfully. But amidst all the mourning, there had been whispers, faint, uneasy murmurs about something his father had been hiding. Tund ignored them at first. Grief was enough to carry without chasing shadows. But the whispers did not fade. In fact, they grew louder. Some claimed the pastor had left behind something dangerous. Others said there was a reason his hut had been locked since his death, and only Tund had the key. At first, he avoided the hut entirely. He lived with his mother in their main house, telling himself he would sort through his father's belongings later. But every time he walked past the hut, he felt a pull, like the Bible inside was calling his name. One calm afternoon, while the sun turned the red earth golden, Tund decided he was ready. He took the key from the clay pot where it had been kept and walked to the hut. The air inside was musty, filled with the smell of dust and old palm wine. Everything was just as his father had left it. The wooden stool, the oil lamp, the stack of hymn books, and on the table, covered by a piece of cloth, the Bible. Tund reached out slowly and pulled the cloth away. His fingers brushed against the leather cover, and a shiver passed through him. He sat down and held it on his lap, wondering if opening it would somehow bring him closer to his father. But just as he began to lift the cover, there was a knock on the hut door. It was Baba Akin, one of the elders. His eyes, usually soft, were sharp that day. "Tund," he said, stepping inside, "there are things your father never told you. Be careful with what you find." Tund frowned. "What do you mean?" The old man sighed, looking around the hut as if afraid of being overheard. "Your father was a good man. But even the good carry heavy burdens. Some secrets are not meant for young eyes." Before Tund could ask more, Baba Akin left, muttering a prayer under his breath. The warning only made Tund more curious. That evening, when the village grew quiet, he returned to the hut, locked the door, and opened the Bible. And that was when the 5 human fingers fell into his hand. His heart pounded. The room felt smaller. He didn't know if he should run to the elders, hide the fingers, or burn the Bible. Then outside, a sudden crunch of footsteps stopped him cold. Someone was just beyond the window. He turned his head slowly, and saw the shadow of a man standing still, watching. The figure didn't move, didn't speak, just waited. Tund's throat went dry. Whoever it was, they had been expecting him to find the fingers. And now they wanted him to know. The figure outside the window stayed still for what felt like forever. Tund's heart thudded so loudly. He feared it would give him away. His first thought was to shout for help, but a voice in his head whispered, "What if the person is someone from the village? Someone you trust?" Before he could decide, the shadow shifted. Footsteps crunched softly on the dry earth, moving away from the hut. Tund rushed to the door and peered into the night, but the figure was gone, swallowed by darkness. He locked the door and turned back to the table. The 5 fingers still lay on the Bible, pointing in strange directions. He could not bear to touch them again, so he pulled out an old calabash bowl and tipped them in, careful not to let them brush his skin. The smell hit him then, faint but unmistakable, like something that had been buried and dug up again. He didn't sleep that night. His mind kept circling questions. Whose fingers were these? Why were they in his father's Bible? And why did someone seem to know the exact moment he would find them? By morning, the whispers in the village had grown louder. Women at the stream spoke in low tones, glancing at him when they thought he wasn't looking. Children ran past him, giggling nervously. Even the elders avoided his eyes. At midday, his mother came to him. "Tund," she began, voice low, "you must stay away from your father's old hut." He frowned. "Why?" She hesitated, wringing her hands. "'Cause people are saying strange things. They say your father was not only a pastor but also a keeper of certain objects." Tund's chest tightened. What kind of objects? Her eyes darted toward the hut. Things that should not be touched. Things that bring misfortune if they are found. He wanted to press her for answers, but at that moment, the sound of a talking drum rolled across the village. It was the signal for a community meeting. The voice of the town crier followed. "People of Iagbami, gather at the Irako tree. There is trouble in the land." Tund and his mother hurried to the central square. The whole village was there. Men, women, children, and elders. Chief Oladipo stood before them. His leopard skin cap tilted on his head. His face was grave. "My people," he began. "Last night, the shrine of Ogun in the sacred forest was broken into. The offering bowl was stolen, and with it, the guardian's blessing has been taken from Iagbami." The crowd gasped. In their culture, the shrine of Ogun was not just a place of worship. It was a shield that protected the village from sickness, bad harvest, and misfortune. Without the offering bowl, they believed, disaster would follow. "We have 1 moon," the chief continued, "to return the bowl before the curse of Ogun falls upon us all." The elders murmured among themselves. Few people began weeping. But Tund noticed something strange. Baba Akin, the same elder who had warned him the night before, was staring at him from across the crowd. His gaze was hard, almost accusing. That evening, as Tund fetched water from the stream, a young boy ran up to him. "My father says you should be careful," the boy whispered, glancing over his shoulder. "They are saying your late father knew something about the stolen offering bowl." Tund froze. Why would they say that? The boy shook his head. "Because they say the bowl can only be found by someone who knows where the 5 fingers of truth point." The words hit Tund like a stone. His mind flashed back to the Bible, to the 5 human fingers lying in a circle on the page. Could they be a map? He didn't want to believe it. But deep down, he knew the theft of the offering bowl and the mystery of the fingers were connected. That night, as the moon bathed the hut in silver light, Tund sat before the Bible again. He studied the way the fingers were arranged. One pointed upward, another to the side, two curved toward each other, and one lay flat, its nail painted black. He felt it now, the weight of responsibility. His father must have left him this clue for a reason. But if he was going to follow it, he would have to go into the sacred forest himself. And everyone knew the sacred forest was a place where the living and the dead walked side by side. Tund closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and made his decision. He would find the offering bowl. But as he reached for the Bible, a sudden knock came at the door. When he opened it, no one was there. Only a small clay pot sat on the ground, and inside it, a single human tooth. And it was fresh. The sight of the fresh tooth in the clay pot made Tund's skin crawl. It was not yellowed or dried like the fingers. It was new, the gum still moist. Someone had left it for him as a message, but he couldn't yet understand what it meant. He carried the pot inside the hut, placing it beside the calabash bowl that held the fingers. Now there were 6 pieces of human remains in his father's possession, 5 fingers and 1 tooth. The next morning, the village woke under a tense sky. Even the birds seemed quieter. Women carried water from the stream with hurried steps. Men sharpened their cutlasses in silence, and the children played without laughter. The chief had ordered a search party to begin looking for the stolen offering bowl. Groups of men were heading into the sacred forest with charms tied to their waists for protection. Tund knew he could not join them openly. Not when people were whispering that his father might have been connected to the theft. He needed to act alone, using the clue from the fingers. After the midday sun passed, he packed a small raffia bag with roasted yam, dried fish, a calabash of water, and a small cutlass. He wrapped the Bible in cloth, hiding it under his arm, and slipped away toward the forest path. The sacred forest began with tall, twisted trees whose roots rose like giant snakes from the ground. Sunlight barely touched the soil here. It was cool and damp, and the air carried the scent of earth and old incense. Tund walked carefully, tracing the directions the fingers seemed to point in his mind. The first finger, the one pointing upward, made him look toward a tall iroko tree in the distance. He headed for it. The closer he got, the more uneasy he felt. The forest seemed to be watching him. The rustle of leaves was too deliberate, too close. Then, out of nowhere, a sharp voice rang out. "Who walks where the spirits guard?" Tund spun around. A woman stepped out from behind a tree. She wore a wrapper of deep red, beads clinking around her ankles, and her hair was braided with cowries. Her eyes were sharp as a hawk's. "I am Tund, son of Pastor Adebayo," he said cautiously. "I come in peace." The woman tilted her head. "Your father was a man of God, but also a man who knew the ways of the unseen. You carry something of his." Tund's grip on the Bible tightened. "How do you know?" She smiled faintly. "The forest knows who walks in it and what they carry. But be warned, boy, if you seek the bowl you must pay a price." He hesitated. "What price?" Her smile faded. "Blood." Before Tund could ask more, she stepped closer, her gaze locking on the Bible. "Inside it are the fingers of truth. But the tooth, that is the warning. Someone else seeks what you seek, and they will spill blood to get it first." Tund's throat tightened. "Who?" She glanced into the trees. "One who was close to your father. Closer than you think." Before he could press her for answers, she stepped back into the shadows and was gone, leaving only the sound of beads clicking faintly in the wind. Shaken, Tund continued deeper into the forest. The second finger in the circle pointed to the right, and he followed that direction until he reached a wide stream. The water ran black, reflecting no light. He knelt to drink, but just as he dipped his calabash into the water, something moved beneath the surface. At first, he thought it was a fish, but then a pale hand shot out, grabbing his wrist with an icy grip. The hand was human, and it was missing all 5 fingers. The cold grip sent a jolt through Tund's entire body. He tried to yank his arm free, but the hand held tight, pulling him closer to the water's edge. The black surface rippled, and a face began to rise, pale, hollow-eyed, and thin as if it had been under the water for years. Its mouth opened slowly, water pouring out instead of words. Tun's instinct screamed to run, but his father's voice echoed in his memory. "Courage is not the absence of fear, my son, but the strength to move in spite of it." With his free hand, he swung his cutlass at the pale wrist. The blade sliced through like soft wood, and the hand released him instantly, sinking back into the black water. The severed wrist landed on the bank beside him, dripping cold water. To his horror, he realized it was not just any hand. It matched the size and shape of the other fingers in the calabash back home. He wrapped it quickly in a leaf, his stomach churning. Was the forest giving him pieces of a body one by one? And if so, whose body was it? The sound of rustling leaves broke his thoughts. Tund looked up and froze. Across the stream stood a figure, the same shadow he had seen outside his hut the night he found the fingers. The person wore a hooded cloak, the face hidden. "You should have stayed away, Tund," the voice called, deep and male. "Your father's sins are not yours to carry." "My father was no sinner," Tund shot back. The hooded figure chuckled. "Then why did he keep these?" From under the cloak, the man held up something wrapped in cloth. He shook it loose, and a small human skull rolled into his palm. Tund's breath caught. "Find the bowl if you wish," the figure said, "but know that each step you take will bring you closer to learning the truth about him. And the truth will crush you." Before Tund could react, the figure turned and melted into the forest. Tund's knees felt weak, but he forced himself to stand. The third finger in the Bible's strange circle curved inward, and in his mind, it pointed him along a winding trail deeper into the sacred forest. The trees here grew taller, the air heavier. The sounds of the outside world faded until the only thing he could hear was the thud of his own heartbeat. He came to a clearing where an ancient stone stood, carved with strange symbols. It looked like a grave marker, but the writing was unlike anything he had seen before. Kneeling, he traced the carvings with his fingers. The moment he did, the ground beneath him began to tremble. The stone shifted, and from behind it, a door-shaped opening in the earth revealed a staircase descending into darkness. A deep, hollow voice echoed from within. "Come in, son of Adebayo. Your father came here before you." Tund's breath hitched. This was no longer just about the stolen offering bowl. This was about secrets his father had carried to his grave, and the forest was determined to reveal them. Still gripping his cutlass, he took the first step down into the darkness. But before his foot touched the second step, something cold and dry wrapped around his ankle, and it began to pull. The grip around Tund's ankle tightened like a snake. He kicked and twisted, but whatever had him was strong and unyielding. The more he struggled, the colder it felt, as if death itself was clutching him. He swung his cutlass downward, striking at the pale, bony thing coiled around his leg. With a dry crack, the grip loosened, and he stumbled forward onto the stone steps. Panting, he looked down and saw what had grabbed him. An arm. Not a living one, but a dried, skeletal arm, its flesh long gone. It twitched once, then lay still. Tund's heart pounded. That made 7 body parts now. 5 fingers, a tooth, a hand, and an arm. Whoever this person had been in life, they were being given to him piece by piece. The voice from the darkness spoke again, slow and heavy. "Your father promised to return what was taken, but he could not. Will you?" Tund swallowed hard. "What was taken?" The voice chuckled low. "The truth." The steps led him into a tunnel that smelled of earth and smoke. The walls were lined with carvings, not of animals or gods, but of people in chains, people bowing to others, people burying something deep in the ground. At the end of the tunnel, the space opened into a circular chamber. In the middle sat a small wooden table, and on it, a clay pot covered with a red cloth. Tund's breath caught. Could this be the stolen offering bowl? But before he could approach, a figure stepped from the shadows. It was the woman in the red wrapper, the one with the cowries in her hair. "You have walked far, son of Adebayo," she said softly. "But the bowl is not yours to take yet." Tund gripped his cutlass. "Then whose is it?" She stepped closer, her eyes dark. "It belongs to the one whose body you carry in pieces. Until you return them whole, the bowl will curse whoever touches it." His stomach tightened. "Then tell me, whose body is this?" Her lips curved in a sad smile. "A man your father feared more than death. A man who knew every sin hidden in Iagbami. A man they called the Truth Keeper." Tun's mind reeled. He had heard whispers of the Truth Keeper when he was a child, a mysterious figure said to know every secret in the village. But the elders claimed he had died long before Tund was born. "Why would my father keep his fingers in a Bible?" Tund asked. The woman's eyes glistened in the dim light. "Because your father was the one who struck him down. And now, his spirit is restless until all his parts are found." Tund's blood ran cold. His father, the man everyone called righteous, a killer? Before he could speak, the ground beneath the chamber rumbled, and a sudden rush of wind blew out the torchlight. In the darkness, the woman's voice came again, but it was no longer gentle. "You have 3 nights, son of Adebayo. 3 nights to gather what remains of him. Or the curse will not only take the village, it will take you." Something moved in the blackness, circling him. A whisper brushed past his ear. "And the next piece is closer than you think." A cold drop landed on his shoulder. He reached up and felt it, warm liquid. Blood. It was dripping from somewhere above him. He raised his eyes slowly, and saw the silhouette of a head hanging upside down in the shadows. The head swayed gently above him, suspended by something hidden in the darkness. The slow drip of blood echoed in the chamber, each drop landing on the stone floor with a sharp tap. Tun's throat went dry. He took a cautious step backward, but the shadowed head followed the movement, tilting as if it were watching him. Summoning his courage, he reached for the cutlass at his side. With a swift motion he slashed upward. The rope, or whatever was holding the head, snapped and it fell heavily into his arms. It was cold, too cold. When he turned it over, his stomach twisted. The face was familiar. The empty, staring eyes belonged to Baba Akin, the elder who had warned him to be careful the night he opened the Bible. Tun staggered back. Baba Akin had been alive just 2 days ago. How had his head ended up here? The woman's voice came again, echoing from nowhere and everywhere. "Every piece you find brings the Truth Keeper closer to being whole, and each piece takes something from the living. He cannot rise without the life of another." Tun's mind raced. If each body part came at the cost of a living soul, then Baba Akin's death meant something, was deliberately completing this unholy collection. His chest tightened. Was someone helping the Truth Keeper's spirit? Or was the spirit taking the pieces himself? The torchlight flickered back to life on its own, revealing new carvings on the chamber walls. They depicted a man holding a Bible in one hand and a bowl in the other, standing over a kneeling figure whose body was scattered into separate parts. The man's face in the carving was his father's. Tun's knees weakened. His father had not only killed the Truth Keeper, he had dismembered him. And if the carvings were to be believed, the offering bowl had been part of it all. A rumble shook the ground beneath him, and a deep, guttural growl filled the chamber. Tun spun around and froze. From the darkness beyond the table, something emerged. It was tall, its skin stretched tight over bone, its eyes glowing like burning coals. Its right hand was complete, but the left was only a stump, the missing hand now in Tun's bag. The creature's voice was like grinding stones. "Son of the thief, son of the butcher, return what is mine, or join the ones I have taken." Tund gripped the cutlass so tightly his knuckles hurt. He knew he couldn't defeat it here, not yet. He needed to survive and find the remaining pieces before the creature did. He turned and bolted up the stone stairs, the growl chasing him into the tunnel. Roots tore at his clothes, shadows stretched long and thin behind him. bursting out into the forest. He gulped the damp air. But the relief was short-lived. From the trees ahead, he saw it. Another clay pot, sitting in the middle of the path. His stomach nodded. Slowly, he stepped forward and lifted the lid. Inside was a heart. And it was still beating. The heart pulsed in the clay pot like it belonged to someone still alive. The slow, steady beat thumping in Tun's ears. Warm mist rose from it, curling into the cool forest air. He felt an instinctive urge to drop the pot and run, but the woman's warning echoed in his head. 3 nights to gather what remains, or the curse will take you. This was another piece of the Truth Keeper, which meant someone or something had just taken a life to get it. But whose? Tund gritted his teeth and wrapped the pot in leaves, placing it gently into his raffia bag alongside the other grim relics. Each step he took was heavier than the last. It wasn't just the weight of the body parts. It was the thought that with every piece he found, someone in the village might be lying dead. He had to stop this before the Truth Keeper's spirit was whole. The 3rd night was fast approaching. The forest seemed to press in on him, the trees whispering in a language he didn't understand. Every shadow looked like the hooded figure who had taunted him at the stream. Suddenly, a twig snapped behind him. Tund spun, cutlass raised, and came face to face with the woman in the red wrapper again. Her cowries rattled softly as she stepped forward. "You are close," she said. "But the final piece is the most dangerous." Tund's voice was tight. "What is it?" Her eyes were serious now. "The head, the one you found in the chamber, is not the true head of the Truth Keeper. It is a decoy. The real head is in the heart of Iagbami, hidden where no one would dare look." Tund's chest tightened. "Where?" Her gaze was steady. "Inside the chief's own shrine." Made no sense. Chief Oladipo was a respected leader. Why would he keep the head of a cursed spirit? "Because," the woman said as if reading his thoughts, "your father did not act alone. The chief helped him kill the Truth Keeper. And now the chief is the last living link to that night. When the Truth Keeper's spirit is whole, he will come for the chief first." A cold wind swept between them. Somewhere in the distance, a drum began to beat. Slow, rhythmic, ominous. "The chief knows you are hunting the pieces," she warned. "If he catches you, you will not live to see the 3rd night." Tund's decision formed instantly. He would not wait for nightfall. He would enter the chief's shrine now, take the final piece, and end this. By the time he reached Iagbami, dusk had turned the village golden and the streets were nearly empty. Everyone was inside, avoiding the forest's curse. He slipped behind the chief's compound, where the shrine stood, a small round hut decorated with cowrie shells and white chalk markings. He pushed open the raffia door. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of burning herbs. In the center stood a carved wooden chest. Tund knelt and opened it, and there it was. The head. Its eyes were closed, but the skin was whole, and the lips moved faintly as if whispering in sleep. He reached out, but a deep voice spoke from the doorway. "I see you have found what your father could not finish." Tund froze. Chief Oladipo stood there, holding a long knife, his face a mask of fury. "Put it down," the chief ordered, stepping closer. "That head belongs to me." Tund's grip on the cutlass tightened. "No. It belongs to the Truth Keeper." The chief's eyes narrowed. "Then you will join him." He lunged. And in that moment, the head's eyes snapped open. The head's eyes glowed like embers in the dark shrine, and a deep, echoing voice rolled from its lips. "Oladipo, I have waited long enough." Chief Oladipo froze mid-lunge, his knife trembling in his hand. His face, the proud mask he always wore, cracked into raw fear. Tund took a step back, clutching the cutlass in one hand and the raffia bag in the other. The body parts inside seemed to grow heavier, as if they were answering the call of the head. The head's mouth opened wider, and an invisible force pulled at the bag. The fingers, the tooth, the hand, the arm, the heart, they all rose into the air, spinning around the head like a dark halo. Chief Oladipo dropped his knife and fell to his knees. "Please, we did what we had to do." He was going to expose us. The Truth Keeper's voice thundered. You silenced me because I knew your sins. But every lie feeds the curse, and now it will be repaid. The floating body parts flew together, attaching themselves to the head in a blur of motion. Flesh knitted to bone, the heart sank into a chest that wasn't there a moment ago, and the head rose onto a full, towering body. The Truth Keeper stood whole, his eyes locked on the chief. Tund wanted to run. Every instinct screamed to flee, but his feet would not move. The Truth Keeper raised a long, bony finger at the chief. Your life for mine. Chief Oladipo scrambled backward, but the Truth Keeper's shadow stretched across the floor like a living thing, wrapping around the chief's legs. His scream filled the shrine as the shadow dragged him forward. Tund turned away, but the sounds of tearing and the sickening thud of the body hitting the floor made his stomach churn. When he dared to look again, the chief's body lay lifeless, his face twisted in terror. The Truth Keeper turned to Tund. For a moment Tund thought he would be next. But the spirit's voice was calmer now, almost human. You are not your father, it said. You sought truth, not lies. And for that, your village will be spared. The spirit stepped toward the shrine's door, its form already fading into mist. Remember, Tund, the truth will always return, no matter how deep it is buried. And then it was gone. Tund stood alone, the air heavy with silence. The offering bowl lay on the floor where the Truth Keeper had stood, clean and whole. The next morning, Tund carried the bowl to the sacred forest and placed it back in Ogun's shrine. The villagers rejoiced when the curse lifted. The air felt lighter, the fear gone. But when they asked how he had found the bowl, Tund said only, "Some truths are not mine to tell." From that day on, Tund was known not just as the son of Pastor Adebayo, but as the man who had saved Iagbami from the curse. Yet, deep in his heart, he carried the weight of his father's secret, and the memory of 5 fingers falling onto his hand.